Greetings, my fellow denizens of Gloomhaven. I hope you're all doing well today. Let's get this started. So, we're going to just kick off quickly by introducing the two speakers we've got today from Flaming Fowl.
First up, we have Craig, the executive producer at Flaming Fowl, followed up by Mike, the creative director at Flaming Fowl.
And I'm the social media manager at Asmodee Digital. So we're just going to kind of kick off here and just set the stage for what's happening. So we've got a few questions to kind of see where we're going today. So Craig, Mike, first things up, do you want to just quickly kind of tell us what's the difference between the campaign mode and adventure mode? Because we're going to be talking about one of these specifically today.
Levels that you can play through and lots of different and unique challenges within that mode, but they're completely separate from the campaign mode.
All right, cool. So let's just follow quickly, because the actual mode that we're going to be talking a lot about today is the roguelike mode, which will be available at early access. So can you kind of just give us a quick brief overview of what is the roguelike mode?
Yeah, so the roguelike mode, similar to a number of other roguelikes that have been out there, but obviously using Gloomhaven rule set as its core. So you'll start the game by choosing a party of adventurers, and they'll have an initial deck set up. For all of you that know Gloomhaven well, characters have a starting deck, but in this mode you might end up getting different decks depending on the particular pairings or groupings that you have chosen. So you might end up having one group with the Cragheart with an earth magic deck, and you might have another deck with the Cragheart and another character, and he's using wind magic because he performs well with that other character. So each of these pairings or groups, or 3 or 4 characters, will then be put onto the world map and have a route across the map they can choose, fighting various scenarios, going to shops, adventures with events and things like that. And basically, it's a shortened version of the campaign as a whole, where the characters level quickly, get lots of rewards as they go, but the enemies level fast as well. So with the campaign, it's an incredibly long 95 quest kind of adventure you can take on. Whereas with this mode, it's a much shorter kind of subsection, but also much more dangerous, because the enemies are getting so much harder, so much faster. Then you really have to make sure the decisions you're making are really matching the enemies that you're facing as you go through it.
All right, cool. So one of the extra things that's really awesome about the roguelike mode is the fact that there are procedurally generated dungeons. Do you want to just kind of tell us some stuff about those?
Yeah, so obviously, again, in the campaign mode, there is a set of adventures which are fully designed with the creatures you'll face, and the objects, the treasure and everything is all predefined. And if you play those quests, you'll play them once and you can go back in and try and get the treasure you didn't get before. But fundamentally, there's a finite amount of content in the campaign, and that's like pretty much any standard story-driven role-playing game. But what the adventure mode, the roguelike mode, allows you to do is basically play on randomly generated dungeons with randomly populated by creatures, with objects and treasures, generated at the start of that run. So what that allows you to do is have very different gameplay experiences between each run. So the game itself gives you lots more different challenges than you would normally have in just playing the campaign, because once you've played the campaign, although it's a very long and fantastic experience, it's kind of done. There's not as many surprises once you've finished it. Whereas with this mode, you don't know necessarily what you're going to expect. Now, the way we're actually implementing it is also still making it balanced, still making the levels flow properly, still putting obstacles where they should be, and gold in interesting places to find it, and the treasures, having to go off track. So we're using a lot of the information and the design ideas that Isaac's put into the campaign to make sure the levels are balanced and are fun to play. But you don't necessarily know where the chests are going to be, what monsters you're going to face, how things are going to combo together, and things like that. So it really, for Gloomhaven experts, it's a completely new experience which they can play and enjoy with all of their favorite rule set, but with a completely new set of levels to fight. Well, an infinite set of levels to fight. And for a new player, it really allows you to experience a lot of the game very quickly, and then go back in and learn it with new characters and play it on easy mode or medium mode or hard mode. So you can really play it at your speed and at your level.
All right, that's cool. I really like the idea of the roguelike mode being like a small snippet of the gameplay that you can get from the campaign. So on top of the roguelike mode, which we're going to be talking about more today, and please focus your questions on that one. We will answer other questions as well, but we really want to focus down on that roguelike mode today. So the other thing that we want to talk about is the characters in the game. A question that was already asked by IMJCal is one of those that we can kind of talk about now, is how many characters will there be at launch and who are they?
Yeah, so we're going to be starting with 4 characters at launch, and we're going to be focusing them on the Cragheart, Spellweaver, the Brute, and the Scoundrel. But we will obviously be adding in more characters sort of immediately after or shortly after. But those are going to be our starter for 4, as it were.
Yeah, and the idea is as well that the day one early access will have a subset of enemies, and then as the weeks pass, we'll be adding more heroes, adding more enemies, and they'll just be seamlessly added into the game. So with the more you play the game over the weeks, just content will constantly be dripping in and making the world more varied and more interesting, and lots more things are added, more items, more abilities, everything will just constantly be getting upgraded.
Yeah, I was just going to say as well that it works really well in terms of, for us as developers, it means we can focus on having some really high quality content within that adventure mode. And then as the new content's ready, we can drop it in rather than trying to rush and get everything in, at a base level. We can actually just drop them in when they're ready.
All right, cool. So guys, focus your questions onto the roguelike mode, which is also called adventure mode, as well as the characters that are going to be in the game. Ask us any questions on those, as well as anything else that comes to mind, and we'll keep on answering them as they come in. Let's jump on to another one. So from Lord Bulb, he actually asked, will character models change to reflect the equipment that they put on?
So, interestingly, a lot of the items are not linked to particular character classes. So the Spellweaver that uses magic can use a massive hammer, and characters with horns can wear helmets. And generally, it's a complete nightmare to try. Obviously, if you have a whole animation set of a character casting spells with her hands, and now she's carrying a warhammer or a bow, it kind of multiplies the number of animations you need to make that look good exponentially, especially when you have 150 items in the game. So it's not something we're technically really able to do. Even a character who has a sword and shield, if you then give him a bow, if you then give him a two-handed battle axe, it's a whole other set of animations. Every idle animation is different. Every swing of a sword is different. So it's not something we're going to be able to put into this game initially. And with the sheer amount of different items, it's probably something we're not going to do, I would have thought.
All right, cool. So, just another quick question on the roguelike mode from IMJCal is, will the roguelike primarily use scenarios from the main campaign, or will they all be original? And are they all randomly generated, or are we picking from different places?
So we definitely don't want to use any from the main campaign, because that spoils it for everybody. So we want, when you play the main campaign, that is a story-driven game, and therefore we don't want to spoil the story. So the way that the creatures are introduced, the bosses that are introduced, the choices you make, the way the city upgrades, everything like that, that is the campaign. And that's staying in the campaign, and we're not going to ruin that for both people who are playing the campaign at the moment with the physical board game, but those who want to play the campaign in the video game as well. Obviously, we're using a lot of the content from it. So we'll be using, tile sets, we'll be using creatures. We'll be using the abilities of the heroes. So some elements will be spoiled. You will end up seeing the same creatures, but you won't see them in the same place. The story won't be the same. The objectives of the quests won't be the same. And everything we're creating on that will use unique combinations compared to the scenarios and compared to each run. So even if you pick the same characters on the same run, the missions that you undertake will be different. And the treasures you find and the places they are and the traps that there are and everything about it will be different. So it's not a case of, oh, I've seen this room before, or even I mean, even the way we're looking at it is we're theming rooms within scenarios. So you may have a crypt which has been overrun by bandits. And for example, one of the rooms we may define as a torture chamber, which therefore will put loads of torture elements onto the walls, but it's run by bandits, so there'll be bandit elements on the walls. That room will be one of the Gloomhaven tile sets, but then how it's decorated, where like a table would be placed in there, where the treasure's placed, what creatures are in there, where the creatures stand, everything about that will be different. So even if you have a torture chamber in the same place, which you won't always have a torture chamber in that dungeon, will feel different. So you're always entering a room, and the moment you open that door, you have a new challenge on how do I take this on? And that's Gloomhaven at its best. It's really looking at the scene and going, right, how do I solve this problem that's been placed in front of me?
All right, excellent. So we've got an actual question here from Meravigium. Apologies if I say your name wrong throughout this entire thing. I'm probably going to do that at some point. Will there be narrators for events and quests? Because that's actually really cool, because it's something you don't have in the tabletop version, because you'd need someone to be doing that for you. Will there be a narrator in the PC version?
Yeah, so a narrator is something we're really keen to have. We think it would be a great addition for the game. But it's not going to be something that we're going to have initially. It's very much, we sort of focusing on the gameplay side of things first. And then we're going to come back from the narration side of things. But it's definitely something we're keen of. I think there's a lot of great games. Things like Darkest Dungeon do a great job of having the narrator have real impact in the game and make you, I don't know, feel quite immersed in that world as well. So there's loads of great examples like that that we'd love to have something similar with Gloomhaven, but it's on the backlog reasonably high up. But yeah, we're very much focusing on getting the gameplay in first, and then we'll layer on the extras.
All right, excellent. So the next one up is from 4Bs. He said that since Isaac has made it clear that he dislikes auto kill abilities, will you be changing any of those cards in this version?
So, yeah, I mean, he's also rebalancing stamina potions as well. So things like that we'll be talking to Isaac about. Fundamentally, it's his game design. I may be the creative director. I may have played a lot of board games in my time. I may have played a lot of Gloomhaven in my time, but it's Isaac's game. So we are not going in and changing any abilities without Isaac communicating that with us. So I will certainly be talking to him about the things that he'd like to change, because obviously he can't retrofit a physical board game. We can retrofit this anytime we like. So it's something that we'll be in communication with him. It's really, I mean, I can't say if we'll change it, because in some respects it's going to partly be up to him. Go on, Craig.
I was just going to say, it's kind of thing as well that we can balance as we go through. We'll actually be able to get data for Isaac, which will probably be different. He normally has to go on a lot of their play testing and then feedback from people and stuff. But we'll probably actually be able to start pulling out data to say, yeah, actually, these items are maybe overpowered. But I think, yeah, as Mike says, the physical board game is a lot harder to say to everybody, okay, can you go and cross that 2 out and make it a 1? But it will be quite easy for us to adapt them. But yeah, we won't be doing anything without Isaac's say so. And certainly for us now, we just focus on copying what's exactly in the board game. And then it takes us 2 seconds to go and change a 2 to a 1 and kick out a new build. So yeah, we'll focus on delivering exactly what's in the box just now, and then we'll worry about changes he's making later on.
This also doesn't preclude us of adding extra stuff at a later date as well. Obviously, again, because we're primarily focused on delivering all the content for the main campaign so that you guys can play the campaign as Isaac's created it, that doesn't mean when that's complete that we couldn't then go, right, let's do some new creatures. Let's do some new stats for the creatures we've got. Let's do a flaming living bones with a big flaming sword. If we wanted to do something like that, then absolutely we can. That's a very simple thing for us to do, but it's not what we'd be starting with, because what we're starting with is creating all those assets for that campaign.
I have to say, one of the things that I really like that you guys were talking about there is the cooperation that you got going with Isaac. That's a really big thing for me. I don't know about you guys, but that's amazing.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, we talk to him. Well, we try and talk to him every fortnight, but he's quite a busy chap. He's usually at events, meeting everybody. But we also have him on email as well. So one of the things we've been talking about, obviously, is the adventure mode and working out balance of creatures. And because fundamentally, we're sitting down and I'm saying to him, how many creatures do we have on a level? What's the average number of creatures per room? How long should an adventure be? And it's, through talking to Isaac and through looking at his previous scenarios that we're able to start balancing those things. But as Craig says, we can actually put that in, we can get a build out, we can get people playing it, and we can go, oh God, everyone's dying in this mission with the... I'm trying not to mention too many creatures that someone will go, I didn't know about that creature, you just spoiled it for me.
Bandits, that's it.
Bandits. There's one with a bandit in. No, there's a bandit archer or something. Oh, the elite bandit archer is killing everybody far too much. But the stats are right. So, do we need to raise her threat, for example, so that when a room is created, she takes up more of the threat because she's more dangerous than she's currently balanced at. Things like that we can change on the fly, so we can rebalance every dungeon very easily.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, so keep on bringing in the questions. Don't be afraid to ask whatever you want about the game, so keep it coming. We've got a question from Meme here about how long does the average scenario take in adventure mode? And yeah.
Do you want to take that one, Craig, or shall I take it?
I'm trying to think. Well, it's kind of hard for us to say because we're quite rapid at hammering through things, or we're constantly distracted by trying to repro things or test specific things. So yeah, I'm not sure I could actually give a definitive answer. You might know better, Mike. Feel free to jump in if you want, but I don't think we know for sure just now.
Well, I mean, if you were to compare it against the board game, obviously setting it up takes 0 seconds. So that's half of the gameplay. That's half of the time a normal scenario would take. I think, actually, I mean, it depends how many characters you have. Obviously, if you've got 4 characters, there is a lot of thinking time. The actual playing time is... Everything happens a lot faster than the physical board game because there's a lot less rule checking by the player. So fundamentally, you're able to take a turn. Once you've chosen your cards and the enemies take their turns, it's like you choose your cards and you perform your actions, and everything else is kind of instant. Obviously, the enemy turns take some time, but on the grand scheme of things, it's 5-10 seconds or something. Whereas playing the physical board game, a turn can take a hell of a lot longer. So I don't know. I mean, it depends how big the mission is. It could be 20 minutes or something, maybe.
I think it's probably less. I think it's probably like 10, 15 minutes. But like I say, it really depends on who you're up against, because for some of the levels, certainly as we're playing through, if you know what you've been playing with the same characters, playing against the same enemies, you have a good idea of kind of what your strategies are going to be. So you can go through it a bit quicker, but a lot of the time in Gloomhaven is actually spent thinking. So it's kind of dependent on how familiar you are with what you're dealing with, and kind of how much you have to analyze what's going on. But I certainly think, like 10 to 15 minutes is probably pretty reasonable.
All right. So the next question we've actually got is from Phil. Is how much protection is there from spoilers in the roguelike mode? And how will you avoid seeing classes that you haven't unlocked in the campaign yet in the roguelike mode?
Yeah, So that's an interesting one. I mean, it's obviously why we are starting with the first 6 characters. I I don't know
Do you
if
want me to carry on while you're coughing?
yeah, I'm trying to cover it up. But yeah, I think it's the kind of thing that certainly there are going to be spoilers if you're going to play the adventure mode before you play the campaign. There will be spoilers eventually, but you will be starting with you'll have the 6 character classes to begin with. You could just limit yourself to that. I don't know whether we need to add a little tick box that says, hide everything from after the starting 6 characters. But even from the likes of enemies and such, we'll want to add them into the adventure mode. So, yeah, if you're concerned about spoilers, then you probably want to limit how much you're playing on the roguelike. But there's definitely stuff we're going to hold back. We'll be bringing in some of the bosses to the adventure mode, but we're certainly not going to bring everything in. So we're trying to keep some stuff back for the campaign.
I think the other way to look at it as well is there is probably something reasonably simple we can do of allowing players to define what content they use from a hero point of view. I don't think we want to do it for enemies and bosses. But fundamentally, if you're playing the early access, mode, the content is as big as the heroes you're playing, right? So when the game comes out, there's 4. We'll quickly drop the other 2 at the start, and then the 7th character, in the game will be a character that is not open in the core box. So in theory, there could be a very simple screen with the icons from the box, and you can tick if you want to add those characters to your EA game. That's something we could certainly look at doing if there's a big call for it, because I absolutely understand. I mean, obviously, as I've said before, the first thing I did when we signed this project is I had to go and open my Gloomhaven box and sadly undo every single box and see every single card and see what everything did. But I don't want every one of our players to have to do that. So considering in the box you see all the icons sitting there, I think it's a massive challenge for us to potentially have a little screen saying, I have already unlocked this character, I'll tick it. Whereas many people who don't own the board game, they won't really mind either way, and they'll just happily say, yeah, give me everything. So fundamentally, if you don't want to unlock the other, I'm going to say 13 characters, 13 from the initial 4, if you don't unlock the other 11 characters from the initial 6, that's your choice in some respects. Obviously, the more you play with, the wider and better game that will be for you. But it's up to you if you would rather wait for the campaign.
All right. That's really cool. Thank you for that. So, next up, we have a question from Dante Cito, which is, will you be adding in the ability to create house rules? Because from some people in the community, they're not quite happy with how some rules are set up. Will you be adding in that ability to sometimes modify specific rule sets?
Well, that kind of determines what the specific rule sets are and how many people want it, because everything will always end up coming down to what's the most important thing that our community wants. If we only have a very small number of people that want it, then fundamentally we're going to be carrying on implementing campaign stuff and et cetera, et cetera. Or if it's a rule that totally breaks the implementation of the game as it is, and to put it into the game, it would take us, a man-month, and it's probably something we're not able to do. If it's something reasonably simple and it's a reasonably easy thing to test, then potentially, and there's lots of people calling for it, then potentially, yes, we can do it. So it's really something, as Sam says, communicate with Sam and Asmodee and get feedback. And obviously this is something that would happen after we go into early access, because obviously the first thing we're doing is not going to put house rules in. But if lots of people saying, there's a grand feedback that, this rule, we'd like to have the other version of it, then, and lots of people are saying that and it's getting a lot of traction, then absolutely there's no reason why we shouldn't do it if it's an easy thing to implement.
Okay, and as a follow-up to that one that Steamhammer asked, and I'm pretty sure we answered this in the last Q&A, so if you guys didn't check that one out after this Q&A, be sure to check it out, because there's a lot of stuff we talked about there as well, is what sort of modding support will there be for the game? At launch or after launch or any time in the future?
Yeah, so modding support is definitely something we'd love to do, but right now it's not our focus. We've got a huge game to get done, first of all, with a huge amount of content. But it is definitely something that's sort of at the back of our mind as we're developing, and partly as well as we're building tools that we need to actually make the game and to develop the game. It is sort of in the back of our head of actually, okay, could we then just farm this out to as part of modding tools so that people could go and make their own stuff. But yeah, it's definitely it's something we'd love to do, and Isaac's been very keen to support people creating their own content, and has shared a lot of assets for the physical board game. So I think that's really cool, and we'd love to do that as well. But obviously, there's just it's that thing where we're a reasonably small team. We just have to focus on doing the high priority stuff first. So that is doing the game. But yeah, it's up there for things we'd like to do. There's certainly nobody here is going, yeah, we're never doing modding support. That's not something we want to do. It's definitely on the list of nice to haves at some point.
What I would say, Craig doesn't like me saying things like this, but there are areas there are areas of the game which are very easy to mod, and there are areas of the game that are not very easy to mod. So potentially adding new abilities to characters, using elements that already exist, potentially adding new enemy abilities, potentially being able to use the random dungeons and adding things into that, those kind of things, and even laying out new dungeons. So creating scenarios, creating enemies, creating hero cards, those would be the things that I'd assume would be easier for us to do. But I absolutely agree with Craig. We need to get the basics done first, but there's potential absolutely to allow people to create their own content as well.
Yeah, there's definitely more. It's that thing of, as we say, it's always the big backlog of things we'd like to do, and what is it people want us to focus on next. But yeah, the first one on the list is always make the game, and then we get to things like modding.
I'm sure there's a gigantic list of things that you guys want to put into the game that's never ending.
Yeah, well, there's a gigantic list of things that have to go into the game that's never ending first, and then we'll get to the other list of things that we want to get in on top of that. So first of all, go through the gigantic list that Gloomhaven already is.
Yeah, definitely. So let's follow up with another question. So how will characters evolve in the roguelike experience exactly? Like, how will they gain experience, and how will they kind of get new equipment? How does this all work in the roguelike mode?
So in the campaign mode, for any that don't know, you get items from chests. You get experience by doing various abilities and finishing quests. You get perks from fulfilling battle goals, and you get items also from shops, and also you get all those things from events as well. So for the roguelike mode, because you're playing across a lot less scenarios each time you're playing through, the way you get all those things will be much faster. So it's going to be a much more accelerated system. So initially you'll start with stuff. So you'll actually start with some things you wouldn't necessarily start with in the campaign. You might have a different set of cards. You might not only have level 1 cards. You might have a couple of other cards to really make your character a bit more specific. Also, when you go through a quest, you'll be obviously be able to find gold, be able to find items. But then when you finish the quest, we can pretty much give you whatever we want to give you. That's already in the game. So this is something we're looking at, and what we're balancing, and what we're looking at, just trying to find out what is the correct speed of progression of the heroes and of the enemies. Because in some respects, if the enemies are leveling up quite fast, the heroes are leveling up quite fast, we probably want to be leveling you up at the end of each scenario. Now, that then gives you those interesting decisions a lot more often than the campaign does, because you might need level up every 2 to 3 missions in the campaign, whereas if you're doing it every mission in the roguelike mode, you've actually got interesting choices. Your character's deck of cards is increasing faster. You're getting more combos off. You're finding more items. You're unlocking more perks. Your ability, attack modifier, deck's changing. You're getting access to more enhancements. So overall, you're just getting more choices, and every run again gets more and more different. So think of everything you can pretty much get in the campaign mode, and those things will exist in the early access roguelike mode, but you'll just be getting more of them over per time segment. But fundamentally, you'll be finishing or dying a lot faster as well. So you're just having that kind of micro campaign feel to the game. So lots more choice, lots more variation.
All right, awesome. So Phil has a question about the release. So how is that expected on that Q1 release date? Is the Q1 going to have only the single player scenario? When can they expect early access and betas, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I can definitely say the release will not have the full campaign in Q1. That is not the intention. Q1 2019 will be us starting early access, and that will be, as we've said before, with a subset of characters, so the 4 starting characters I talked about before, and a smaller subset of the enemies as well. And then we'll continue to drip in additional content. And then once we've done sort of the vast majority of the content there, that be the point where we're starting to then talk about releasing the full campaign. But that's going to be, many months further down the line from that. But the cool thing is we've got the opportunity then to, add more content or do more features and do things like modding and stuff. We can try and balance that around, trying to finish the main campaign and creating more stuff and more features. But we're very much just focused on getting that first early access build out, and then looking at actually how are things going, what else can we do, what's the next priority. But yeah, I mean, in terms of betas and such like, we don't have any dates yet, but yeah, it's certainly not going to be this side of Christmas. So, focus on having a good Christmas and New Year, and then come back, and then maybe in sort of January timeframe, we'll start chatting to some people. But yeah, we're very keen to get people in and playing. We just want to make sure that it's a good, fun experience, even from the sort of the alpha sort of beta phase. But yeah, definitely keen. I know a few people have already voiced an interest in getting involved, and so we're definitely keen to hear from people, and for you guys that are regulars around here, we'll definitely be high up the list of people that we'll be inviting to have a first look at the game.
And also, don't forget to keep an eye on the Discord and all the Asmodee Digital social channels, because if we do actually start running a beta, we will be announcing it here and on our social channels. So be sure to keep an eye on all those and follow and everything. So, Phil has another question. I think this is going to be onto the nice-to-have features list, is multiplayer for the roguelike mode.
Do you want to take that one, Craig? It's that old dev question again, isn't it, of development and the list.
Well, yeah, I think multiplayer is the big thing. We're very aware a lot of people want multiplayer. We want multiplayer, so it's on the list. I'll let you answer whether if we did multiplayer, whether we go in the roguelike as well as the campaign.
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
That's a simple answer.
The answer is if we do multiplayer, it will go into the roguelike, but it's the question of multiplayer has not been confirmed at this point.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're all in conversations about that at the moment, and it's very much at the top of the list. So it's that old watch this space, isn't it? You can't really say anything more than that.
Yeah, well, we just have to focus on creating that first build, trying to get to the point where we can roll out to early access and get you guys come in and play and have fun with the game, and then we can look at what we're adding on top of that. So things like multiplayer, we'd love to do it, but any sort of conversations we have around that do then detract from us getting the first version of the game for you guys to play. So we're really just trying to keep focused on getting that first version done, and then we can start having conversations about, okay, are we doing multiplayer? When would we do it? Do we do it, during early access? Do we do it after we release the campaign? Those are all conversations and questions that we need to sort of tackle next year. But it's all about just trying to get to the point where you guys have got something cool and fun that you can come and play as early as possible.
All right. Don't forget, guys, keep on shooting out those questions. We'll try and get to all of them. So, I am Jake Howe. Ask the question, are there achievements or increased difficulty over time, like in Slay the Spire, to encourage people from continuing going over and over on the roguelike mode?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of Slay the Spire. I'm a big fan of Dream Quest, actually, which is pre-Slay the Spire, because I kind of think Slay the Spire saw Dream Quest, thought, oh, we could do some things with that. That's pretty cool. So have a check of Dream Quest. I thought that was really cool. And also Into the Breach as well. They do some interesting things with roguelikes as well. So it's kind of a combination of a number of different roguelikes. So yes, there are achievements. Each party has their own set. So if you're playing one kind of combination and they're kind of they play in a certain way, then they will have an achievement which rewards you for playing with that kind of way. So really, as a player, you're able to play through with these different parties, and as you complete them, they gain you renown to unlock other parties. That said, there's obviously 2-player party, 3-player party, and 4-player parties, but then there's 3 difficulty levels as well. So the real, Gloomhaven experts are going to be taking on roguelike mode with 4 characters on hard. And that is not a simple task. So increasing difficulty beyond that will be difficult because that in itself is going to be a hell of a challenge for a seasoned Gloomhaven player. Again, if we end up putting multiplayer in, it makes it slightly easier because you think about less characters. But that's, as we've just said, a later date. But yes, fundamentally, there will be achievements, both single-run achievements and multi-run achievements. And yes, there are different difficulty levels.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of achievements, if you're talking specifically around like Steam achievements, then the only thing I sort of add in there is just doing the sort of early access type game. I'm always hesitant about adding specific achievements too early on for a Steam game, because we're then, we start to actually be restricted by what we can do from a design and gameplay point of view. If we're like, oh, well, we have that achievement and, we don't want to actually break that or make that easier or harder to do. So it tends to be the kind of thing, if it's Steam achievements, then we tend to push them a bit further back away from the early access.
All right, up next is Seven Spirits. He has the question of movement states for monsters. Is there going to be the UI example of where they're going to potentially move on the board based on its current state, because of the automation of the monster movement being the big difference between the physical and the digital version?
Yeah, so that is in the backlog. It will appear. It's just when it will appear. So it's probably going to appear at some point in early access. It might not be day one, but yes, I do want to put that for the reasons you've explained, which is correct. Obviously, it changes as soon as you do anything. So as soon as you move a character around, the monsters are likely going to change what they're going to do. So it's kind of a live feed. How we do it is one of the difficult things as well. Lots of things in Gloomhaven. How do we make these things look good? How do we do the attack modifier flow? How do you choose things on the cards? There's lots and lots of GUI things we're going through at the moment, but this is one of them. So yes, I'm looking to solve that and give the players the information they need, which is different to other computer games. It's very different to other strategy games where you don't know what the AI is going to do. Obviously, this is only once you've chosen your cards. You don't get to see what they're doing before you've chosen your abilities for the turn. But while it's your turn, yes, you can see where the enemy potentially, well, not potentially, is going to go. Fundamentally, when it's in, it'll also help us debug as well. So it's actually a positive thing for development. So it's not something I'm leaving till the end of early access. It will be nearer the beginning at some point.
Okay, so one of the things you mentioned earlier about the roguelike mode is that you'll have the map that you adventure around before you go into your little scenarios. Will there be road events in the roguelike mode?
So we're thinking of two different things at the moment. We haven't quite decided on which one it is. So at the moment, every node on the map is an interaction. So that could be a scenario, it could be a shop, it could be a trainer, and at the moment it could be an event. So that's how we're doing road events at the moment, is a node can be an event. Again, a bit like Slay the Spire. We've also toyed with the idea of that events are on the roads to the nodes. But at the moment, we're trying it out, and this is one of the parts of early access and thinking, does it work? Does it not work? So that's currently the plan: is nodes are events. So you won't necessarily know what the events are. You won't necessarily know which of the nodes are events and which are scenarios and which are shops and whatever. And some you will know and some you won't. And even a scenario at the moment has 4 different levels of scouting. So at the lowest level, you don't even know it's a scenario. At the next level, you know there are bandits there, but you don't know what the scenario is. At the next level, you know they're bandits and you know they're in a crypt. And at the 4th level of scouting, you know what bandits are in the crypt. So you know exactly the creature types. So as you look across the map, you can go, oh, look, over there, there's... I have to keep saying bandits again, don't I? There's some undead. Okay, there's some undead in that one over there. Therefore, I know to take on undead, I need these types of abilities. Therefore, my character is well set up for this. Maybe I need to go to that shop beforehand. Oh, it's a shoe shop or a boot shop. So I go there to pick up the boots I need to help me take out the undead further on. So there's a strategic level to the map itself. Hopefully a little bit more than in some of these other games where you just can see icons. In our game, we're trying to give you a bit more information so you can make more determined choices from a high level, which fundamentally rewards you for playing the game more because you know that what those choices should be a bit more. So it's really just trying to add gameplay and tactical depth to every level of this game, not just opening a room and fighting monsters, which obviously in itself is also really tactical.
Okay, so up next, could you do just a really quick introduction of what the starting 6 characters are, or who they are?
It's 4 initially, but the other 2 may be coming along very quickly. So I can go through the first 4. So difficult to pick the first one. I play the Cragcart at home, so I'll start with the Cragcart. So the Cragcart is a character which is... He's kind of a jack of all trades. He does a lot of different things. He has quite a lot of ranged attacks, quite a lot of dealing damage, which gets through shields at small values, but he runs around stomping on people and throwing rocks at them. But he also has a reasonable amount of melee and he can heal. So he's kind of a jack of all trades. He also deals with obstacles a lot, so he can create obstacles, smash obstacles. Generally a bit, just goes around smashing things. But has lots and lots of options. So I find him a great character to play if you're playing a single character in the board game. Obviously, the more characters you play, he actually becomes slightly more difficult because he can do so much. He has a lot more choice. So he's kind of a slightly higher difficulty character. The second character we've concentrated on initially is the Spellweaver, and the Spellweaver is a primarily ranged class, high damage but low health, and a less number of cards than other characters. However, she does have the ability to recover her cards from the discard pile, the lost pile, which is very rare. Only a couple of characters can do that. And that means she also is very difficult to play for a new player because they don't use that ability particularly well, and she runs out of cards very quickly. So again, she's kind of a more complex class, but is one of the starting classes. But once you understand her, which probably only takes 2 or 3 games or 2 or 3 missions, which in our game could be by the end of the first run, by then you're starting to understand how cards work and the whole system works. And after you've understood that, her actual abilities themselves aren't that complicated. But yeah, as I say, she's high damage. She uses a lot of elements, and she can consume and infuse elements quite a lot, so has quite a lot of different choices on really how she uses the mana in the world and the enemies, how they use it as well. She can like take it away from them and use it against them. Then the third character class is the Brute. And do you want to? Are you?
Well, I was going to say I don't think we need you to go through. We'll not make you go through all of them, will we? For the starting ones? If you want, or just I know Sam's got a number of questions he wants to get through, but
I can be quicker.
Keep going. It's all
okay.
good.
Okay, it's all good.
Got time.
The third one is the Brute. The Brute is primarily a melee class, but he's also quite a defensive class. He has a lot of health. So can take damage quite well, can bring shields up, can stun enemies. And then finally there's the Scoundrel, and she's quite an interesting one because she gets bonuses based on other characters and where they're standing. So she's a very, and this is why Gloomhaven is so great, because all the characters play so differently. So she's very much about ensuring that enemies are standing next to your characters and not next to each other. And fundamentally, she's about moving around the board, poisoning people, throwing daggers at them. So each of the characters, they have a similar kind of ability set, but the way they use those abilities is very interesting with the combos they have individually and between them. So when you play different pairings of characters, the game plays very different. So if you have the Spellweaver who's quite weak, but then you put the Brute in front of her, then fundamentally the Brute stomps around and the Spellweaver blows everything up. But then if you put the Scoundrel with the Brute, it's all about the Scoundrel getting around the back and stabbing them, and then the Brute, but maybe they don't have quite as much healing then, so the Brute is a bit more vulnerable. So it's interesting. It's very very well designed tactical game.
Sounds good. I think I might buy it.
Okay. You mentioned you don't want to talk about any of the monsters or to avoid spoiling things, but is there going to be? Are you planning on putting in any monsters that aren't already in the board game? So something new that's your own creations.
Yeah. So I mentioned that earlier that we can do that, but the initial thing that we have to do is finish all of the content for the campaign. So there's no reason why we can't, apart from obviously Isaac going, "What are you doing? You can't do that. That doesn't fit in my world," or "That character would never do that." So absolutely we can do it. So it's really about prioritizing everything we're doing. And initially the prioritization is to get everything from the campaign in. So that's always the stuff we'll be doing first. That doesn't mean we can't add completely new, unique stuff in reasonably quickly. So as soon as we decide we want to get some more variants in or whatever, we can do that.
So what about, instead of it being a completely new monster, are you considering adding in mods to certain monsters? So such as a poisonous bandit or other modifiers for enemy characters like that?
Yeah, so we can do that. That is something which is certainly within the realms of the systems we have in place at the moment. The only concern about doing that is balance, because obviously if we start adding various modifiers to characters and they become more difficult, because they don't exist in the initial game, because Isaac has never played with those characters through his playtesting sets, we then don't know exactly if they're going to be overbalanced or underbalanced. Now, that doesn't mean we can't do it, and that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. It just means we have to be very careful with it. And also, that all has to be tested. So as soon as we add a new character, and let's say we add a poison bandit with the poison blade, that has to go through test. It has to be signed off. We have to ensure it works. We can't just chuck it straight in the game and go, "Yep, poison bandit's done." So we've really got to cost it. And is it worth, our time and the tester's time testing the poison bandit, or should we get creature Z in and get that in next, because that's actually the next creature that needs to go in for release Y on the early access schedule, for example. So I think there becomes a point where everything's ready and done, and at that point we go crazy and just start chucking in loads of stuff.
Okay. And what about will there be any monsters that are in the board game right now that won't make it into the video game?
Well, considering we're doing the whole campaign, no, I don't believe so. Whether everything goes into early access, probably not. Not because we don't want to do it, but because we don't want to spoil all of the really important bosses.
Oh, like the I'll not say it. I'm joking.
Or like the thing I can't talk about.
We definitely are holding some guys back for the campaign.
Yeah, we're more likely for the bosses going to use the optional stuff or the very early ones. We don't really want to tell you what the big bads are across all the different areas. Maybe once the campaign's out and working and playing well and people have played it enough, we can then go, right, now we'll add them into the roguelike mode and make it bigger.
With some of them, we could even just say that they'll be added to the roguelike once you've finished the campaign, so they kind of can be an unlock and a reward for finishing the campaign, and then they'll go into your roguelike mode.
Or even when you've met them in the campaign. I mean, that's certainly something we could look at doing later, once the campaign's finished.
All right, awesome. So up next is a question on Discord. Can't remember who actually asked this, but are there any plans for a console launch?
I guess I'll need to answer that one. Not currently, but it's definitely, again, it's something we'd love to do. We're, obviously our heritage is very console based. So yeah, we'd love to do it, but it's PC for the initial focus. But yeah, console is something we'd love to do.
Isn't the answer to that is none that have been announced? And then you just let people go, oh, what does that mean? That's what you're supposed to do, isn't it, Craig?
No, that's the rubbish PR answer. I'll just say we've not yet. I'd love to do it, but we're not yet.
Okay, bouncing back to the roguelike experience. How does this bring a new dimension to the game that the board game doesn't have? How does this bring a new experience?
Well, I mean, I've probably gone through it a little bit already, but it's really that lunchtime gaming session. And Gloomhaven fundamentally is not a lunchtime gaming session game from a campaign point of view. That doesn't mean you can't progress in the campaign. Absolutely you can at a lunchtime. But quite a lot of people are time poor. And it's something when I used to work on Fable, I always used to think, yeah, you turn on Fable, you play Fable for 4 hours and you spend 4 hours killing beetles and hobs. And wouldn't it be great if within 4 hours you could fight a dragon, but you couldn't always do that because you had to get through the hobs and the beetles first. So what this allows you to do is get to the final boss of early access modes, whichever ones they may be, within that much shorter time period. So will a whole run take a lunchtime? That's still to see exactly how long it's going to take. Well, it takes 2 lunchtimes, something probably more close to that. So therefore you can really see a lot more of the content of the game without having to fight the early level creatures, to only use the early level abilities, to only have access to the early level items. So it really allows you to see a lot more of the game much faster, and therefore see a lot more of the combinations, have a lot more challenge, rather than going, right, these are the abilities I've got, these are the characters I've got, I found this one item, therefore I'm going to be using that set of stuff for the next 3 quests. In the roguelike mode, that won't be the case. You'll fight through that first scenario, we'll chuck a load of stuff at you, the enemies will all power up, you'll go into the next fight, you're like, right, this has changed, I've got to think of different things now, right, fight all that lot, scrape your way through there, then get a load more stuff and go, right, now what do I do? What does this mean for me? And that's where it becomes really interesting, is every different scenario is a different challenge and has different choices to make. And both are great experiences. One of a long-term kind of campaign with a story, with upgrading characters, with really learning how these move and having life goals. And the other one, very much like a what is my challenge now kind of thing, and how does that work, and why is that fun, and how do I kill the things that are standing in front of me today?
All right, cool. So guys, just so you know, we will be concluding the Q&A soon, so make sure that you get your questions in quick, and we'll try to get to them before we finish up. A question from Phil was, are you looking for people to test veteran Gloomhaven players to test the game at some point?
Yes. I was going to actually suggest, Sam, maybe, yeah. Can we get like a role added to Discord that's like interested in beta testing or something? So then we could actually start tagging everybody that actually wants to play, just so we've got a little group that we can come back to and say, okay, here's the short list of people that are actually interested. I think that would be cool, and then people could send a request to join that role or something. Something like that would be good, because yeah, we absolutely definitely want to get you guys to come in and play and find all the bugs that we've missed before we launch, and yeah, get your feedback, because yeah, you guys are probably some of the most valuable testers we could find.
Yeah, I think that for me, the people that have come to the Discord channel are the people, in theory. I mean, you've got the Steam forums, you've got obviously the Board Game Geek and places like that where you can talk about Gloomhaven. But the people that, when you send out an invite, Sam, and you say, come to Discord and listen to people, and come and ask questions, and the people that come to that are the people that are the most keen, that we want to hear from first, So it's the people in this room, the people listening to this later, they're the ones who are the most excited about the game, and therefore they're the ones that we want to get in, and we want their opinions.
Yeah, it's the guys that have listened to 57 minutes of us rambling on to get to this point. We're like, okay, here's the secret code. You can come and just message Sam directly on Discord, and he'll put you on the list.
Well, that's a good thing to kind of plug right now. If anyone's listening after the fact on YouTube or whatever, be sure to jump on the Discord and send me a message if you are interested in participating in the beta. And everyone listening now, don't forget to do it as well. And I'll jump on that as soon as I can.
Love giving Sam more work to do. That's good.
Yeah, I don't have too much at all. All right, guys, do we have any final questions to be able to throw out there? It's your last chance to ask the questions. Oh, are we going to get any final questions before we finish up? Oh, I'm already getting messages from everyone.
They're not asking questions. They're all too busy trying to get the messages out. So I think we need to come up with some sort of test, We give them like a scenario, and you say, you're partway through the scenario. Here are the cards you have. Here are the enemies. What do you do? How do you win the game in 2 moves or something? So we can sort of make sure we're getting the top guys.
The elite, as it were.
Or a video of the game and say which specific rule has not been implemented correctly in this 1 minute segment.
Yeah, it's when you do that though, and then they'll like point out something else. You're like, oh yeah, there was 2. Oh, 3. Damn it.
Okay, so we've got one of the final questions from Phil.
No, that's one
of his test question. Oh God, I'm getting confused.
What's the answer, Mike?
Yeah, Mike, what's the answer?
The problem with the answer is different people will have a different opinion. So if I give an answer, then someone will go, well, you're wrong, because the actual answer should be this. And then someone else will disagree with Phil. And therefore, there is no correct answer online. That is the answer.
There you go. You win.
Yeah, this is why I'm not
director on Gloomhaven. Well done.
This question is why I'm not on Twitter. Because if I was to answer the question, 1,000 people would tell me I was wrong, and 500 would tell me I was right, whichever way I did it. So I'm not answering your question, Phil, but fair enough. Good question.
All right, guys. Well, I think we'll call it here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you on the next Q&A. Don't forget, if you are listening in, come join us on Discord for the next Q&A, and don't forget to follow us on all of our social channels for Asmodee Digital, as well as for Flaming Fowl.
See ya. Thanks for listening.
Thanks. Bye.
Cheers, everyone. Goodbye. Have a good one.